Hi, Miss West.
Hi, Miss Diaz.
It was great being in your lesson yesterday when
Thanks.
kids were exploring, what was it? Why organisms have different adaptations.
Yes.
I thought it was cool because we had talked about in your CLP discussion about how there were like two main goals that came out of that discussion. One, you were looking to mix up the way that kids interacted with material more, like different ways of practicing, and we talked about things like close reading, different writing assignments, and incorporating labs. And yesterday was a lab.
Yep.
How did you feel like it went?
I feel like it went okay. I think there were like a few logistical things I hadn't thought through all the way. Like when I did it, it worked, but I didn't think about how, like specifically, I would have to give instructions for like some of the parts for it to work, because you could just like kind of pick up the whole yarn thing with the spoon at once, which like doesn't work. So I just think it was by like the second two classes, so by like UT and UMBC, like I was able to like exactly say the directions in a way where it was like the data came out the way it should have, but otherwise if like you weren't clear, then it like, or if I wasn't clear, it like didn't work as well.
Yeah. It seemed like a lab that was super appropriate to the objective in that there are two different implements that had like a relationship to what a beak might actually look like, and then two different kinds of foods that were similar to foods that birds would eat, with like the yarn as the worms and the beads would be like what, like little bugs?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that like you met the goal of trying to mix it up and putting the lab in place for their practice. And then the second thing that we talked about with your CLP was incorporating more student dialogue. I think that's kind of what you're getting at with the questions and how to incorporate like student voice in that part of the practice or in those parts of classes.
Yeah.
How do you think that went yesterday in terms of student dialogue?
To be honest, I don't really remember at the part of the class that you were in how it went.
Well, in general, because I think I was there for a part that was instructions, which I think is what you're speaking to. But if one of the things that we're working on is student dialogue, how could you incorporate it in that part or in general in the like either post-lab practice or whatever?
So I think in the instruction part, it could have been more like me say it once and then have another kid repeat it, or like say it in their own words what they were supposed to do, because I think there's still some confusion about like what exactly like always the next steps were. I think in other parts, like especially the classes that like were able to get through it when we were sharing like the results, I think like there were some classes that I was able to push it a little bit more, and I think it helped. And I've been trying to do like agree and disagree more and calling on kids to respond, but I don't remember specifically that day if it happened that well.
Yeah, because I remember the lesson before that I observed, that was something that we were talking about. And then when I stepped into this lesson, I think you're asking, the question you had asked kids was, why are some birds' beaks different shapes?
Yeah.
And I think a couple of kids like missed the mark a little bit in terms of what I hadn't started recording at that point on my notes, but not quite what you were expecting for them to say or like wanted to gear them towards. And then toward the end, there were a couple of kids, like I think Brianna answered and someone else who said something along the lines of like they might be eating different types of foods or something along the lines of how they would survive.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that was a time where you were trying to get more kids to speak up and maybe interact off each other, and then I wasn't there for the debrief of the lab, but that's the part that you're talking about. So I wonder if then the action that we're working on is, I don't know, what would you say that it is? Like the way that you're responding to students to encourage them to like go deeper into their answers, or the way that you're calling on kids to get them to speak to one another?
I feel like the calling on kids is like more like I can either cold call or just like call on a hand or just like use popsicle sticks. Like I feel like I know more like tools for that. I think the part that it still like seems more challenging is the actual like questioning parts. Like what, like how to like design the questions in a way where like they can add to each other. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe like scaffolding, or maybe asking, I'm thinking two different things, either scaffolding the question, like if you're asking a kind of high level question, although I know your popsicle sticks are leveled, so that I think that helps in which questions you ask which kids. But like scaffolding is so if they don't quite get it right, what is the next level question below that? Or even if they do get it right, what's the next level question above to push it?
Yeah.
Or even like having the same rigor level of question, but one that you ask in different ways, so that there's a lot more touches on the question. So like, if you had asked the question one way to one student, then you can ask it a different way to another student and say, like, how could you add on to that question? Here's a new question for you. I don't know, which one of those do you think is more applicable?
I think, like, scaffolding, like, within the way, like, or when you call on kids, right? So, like, we were doing it today. It was like a similar like adaptation, but they needed to guess like where it should belong. And so it was like first like just where, and then like why, and like using like the evidence they had on these like fact sheets to figure it out. And I think it was like just like the way the activity was, it was like kind of scaffolded anyway. So it was like a first guess, but then like why, like using evidence. And I think because it was like a more scaffolded idea, it was easier to do different points, because I'd be like, okay, like she said desert, like which of the pieces of evidence, like I don't know, I think that like helped a lot today. And I don't think I did
in terms
that
of
yesterday.
animals' feet and things, like what?
Well, we were talking
what
about
would this
plants,
one?
but yeah.
Okay, plants. Like cacti.
Yeah,
in the desert.
cacti, yes.
Well,
So I think, yeah, that helped a lot today, so I think I'd want to do that more in like different ways.
so planning scaffolded questions that build the rigor.
Mm-hmm.
So you're either able to like go down a level to ask kids if they're not quite able to make it up to your level of questioning yet, or to push them further.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, do you think that it would be more helpful to like go back to the lesson that I observed and try to add in like replay that and add in more scaffolded questions, either to the debrief that I didn't see or the questions you're asking when I got in, or I'm not sure what your lesson is for tomorrow, but maybe that would be more helpful to go into that.
That would be more helpful because it's like a similar, I just threw it last week. Can I grab it?
Yeah.
It's similar to the model that we're going to do for the next 4 days. So I was like pretty adamant about the science team doing it this way. And so each day, so one more day of plants tomorrow, we're doing 3 adaptations, and then on both Thursday and Friday, it's 4 adaptations each for animals, but it's like a specific adaptation where they first need to like observe and make observations about the picture on the board, and then they're using these sheets as like fact sheets to like guess which of the 4 environments it's in best, and then using one of these like pieces of evidence for like why. And so that's, yeah. So I guess we're gonna be doing a like same model, like using the same environments, just like changing up the adaptations. So I guess like making this part of class going better would be best.
Yeah, so is this the one that you used today?
Yeah, and so I have the one for tomorrow. Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
Okay. But it's the exact same format. It's just changing out the adaptations.
For still plants tomorrow?
Oh, I actually don't have it yet. It is still plants tomorrow, yeah, but the adaptations.
It's okay. We can do this one because if it's similar, so there'll be different adaptations for plants.
And I'm pretty sure this is like vines or like growing up. So in like the rainforest, like growing up towards the light. I'm pretty sure this one is for Arctic, like this one is air bubbles.
In plants.
Air bubbles in plants for like aquatic plants, like seaweed floating. This one is
You have one for each.
yeah, I think desert, it's like long roots, so they're able to get more water. I don't think that's true though. I don't know.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's on my unit, but I don't know where it is.
Well, if the action is that you're trying to plan scaffolded questions to ask
to like lead them from the idea of like them looking at it and make observations, it's like which of these is it best in and why, using evidence.
Okay.
Because it was like better by the end of the day once I like got into the habit of it, but it was rough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, what is so how would you use this in the lesson? So the kids first are looking and seeing something on the board and they're drawing.
So the first is like there's a picture of a vine and they're just drawing it. And like we like be like, what do you notice about this picture of this plant?
So that's like a first level question.
Yeah, so it's like growing up that tree. So it'll be a picture of like a vine growing up a tree in the rainforest.
Okay.
It won't be clear that it's rainforest.
What if the student said, and this is getting a little bit to like how you would scaffold or ask another question to go after it. So if your first question is, what do you notice about this plant? So it's very like basic and visual. What if the student said like, I noticed that it's green.
I would then say that is true, but how does this plant look different than like other plants you've seen?
Okay, I say.
So if I'm trying to get it to like, I want them to notice that there's this plant that's like growing up in a vine around a big tree.
So there's a big vine and I'm seeing that, and so I say, I noticed that it's green, and then your next question would be, what do you notice that's different than other plants? And I might say something like,
or I might just say like, what else? Like
brown.
What else? I would say like, what else do you notice?
I noticed that it's long.
Okay, long in what way?
It goes up high on the tree.
Okay.
It grows up.
So it looks like it's growing where?
Up.
Okay. Up, and then I would maybe ask someone else, like up towards what?
What is up there?
Yeah.
And so you might ask somebody else that question.
Yeah.
Up towards the air.
Up towards the air? Can it not get air at the bottom? That's kind of leading.
It's kind of, yeah. So then we're getting into another action step that we want to ask later. But you have several questions first. Like, what do you notice? The next question after that, like, what else do you notice prompts them to say something different? And then you're trying to get to more high-level thinking, like noticing that the sun's a part of the, like, I don't know, what does that get you? Like, it's another part of the ecosystem that...
Well, I think, so it's kind of different for each, it'll be different for each adaptation, but for this one, like, one thing we talked about today is, like, we talked for rainforest, like, really big leaves, and, like, big leaves so it can collect more sunlight. Like, I guess if it was, they said it would go, like, up towards, I think I would ask, like up towards what? And then if they said air, I'd be like, okay, like, do you agree? Like, I would probably then ask somebody else. Because I feel like kids, based on what they know about plants, I could ask, like, what do plants need? Water, air, and sunlight. Like, which of those could they not get on the bottom where, like, it is or something? Mm-hmm. And I don't know.
So it seems like the first level of questioning is, like, observation, what you see. The second level is more making connections to other things that they've learned.
I think making connections, but then also making connections to, like what they need and, like, what is it that, like, could be hard about, like which of those would they not be getting where they are, sort of. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, so they would know that plants need, like, water and sunlight. Like, those are the biggest things that they need. Like, in the desert, so for, like, water and sunlight, like, in the desert, like, which of those, like, is, like, hardest for it to get, maybe? And that usually is, like, the focus of an adaptation. So it's, like, hardest to get sunlight in the rainforest, which is why it has this, like, special adaptation. Mm-hmm. But that goes into the why, and that's what I don't really want to tell them. I want them, like, looking at these to find. So I guess for these, I just, like, make observations, and then...
So just solicit a lot of different observations from the whole group of kids to get them talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, I guess, so, like, how they had it is they were, like, sharing these, and then they had to make a guess about, like, which one it was. And they mostly guessed it correctly. It was, like, having them choose the evidence for why, like, based on background knowledge, having them choose the best piece of evidence for, like, why. The one that today they struggled with the most was it was short roots, and it was the tundra, and in, like, areas where, like, the ground is frozen solid for part of the year, like, short roots that are really shallow are beneficial because they can, like, grow in, like, the very top part that's not frozen. But, like, that's not something they really have, like, common knowledge about. Like, they know it's cold. So, like, in this class with my later classes, the way I was able to lead them to that was, like, we talked about short roots, and it was, like, I asked, like, why would a plant want short roots? Or, like, why would it be better to have short roots? And then, like, someone was like, because they can't go deep for some reason. Or I don't know if I said that or they did. And be like, so which of these four, like, would for some reason roots not be able to go deep? Like, which for some reason would they not be able to go deep? And that was where they led to, like, that piece of evidence. But I had to, like, give them that clue for later classes because it was, like, pretty rough, the first two.
Yeah.
Because they kept saying aquatic, and that wasn't correct.
Because they think of it as floating and
yeah, but I was saying, like, aquatic plants would still have roots that are, like, because there can be aquatic plants that have, like, floating roots, kind of, but roots are, like, in the ground, so it could be one that by the side, but yeah. Once I gave the clue that, like, I think it has to do, like, what do you think the point of the adaptation is? So, like, if it's shallow, like, and it can't go deeper, like, why, it would have to be a reason for why it can't go deep for that to be a good thing. So kind of, like, the, like, how would it help, and then that.
I think what you're getting at are some questions are, like, kind of general for all of the different four, and they could even be questions that kids ask each other.
Yeah.
So if the goal is for not only for you to be able to ask scaffolded questions to, like, lead kids to a response without, like, providing leading questions, right? Like, doing different levels of questioning versus, like, what is up in the sky?
Yeah.
Like, your question that's not leading might say something like, what does this plant need? And they'll say, these three things. Mm-hmm. Well, then what would it be searching for?
So, like, why would it be going up?
Yeah, so that'd be, like, a higher scaffolded question without leading them to the next one or making them feel like they're wrong in the first place. So what they're saying is valid.
Yeah.
That's what is there. So I think two things. One, like, you're getting at what are the scaffolded questions that you can ask, which I see you listing here, like, 1, observations, 2, connections, 3 is, like, the why question. Mm-hmm. And then you're also pointing out some questions that kids could be able to ask each other. Yeah. Like the question you mentioned about what does this plant have a hard time getting?
Yeah.
So what do you think for your next lesson if you wanted to I guess I'm asking then, what is the next action step that we want? Do we want you to ask more scaffolded questions or kids to be able to ask one another questions to talk amongst themselves?
I think more scaffolded questions from me is like more realistic right now.
So we have 4 scaffolded questions here.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to try with one more of these?
Yeah, let me see if I can pull it up really quick because I wrote most of it, but Kaylee finished it. Maybe a couple pages with it. Sorry, one second.
It's okay.
I just want to see if I did this wrong. My hand. It's like I in pen down.
I wrote it on the board today for the first time in a while, and I got lots of black pen on me.
So
Are you trying to find one specific plant?
yeah, just so we can like see, because it'll be on like a specific picture if I don't change it. Okay.
Well, let's just pretend
Yeah,
it's seaweed then.
Seaweed? Okay, with the air bubbles.
Yeah.
All right.
So the first step is you're asking them to look at a picture.
Here.
That one does.
Oh.
No, up there. That one does.
Oh, perfect. All right, so we'll be looking at a picture, this one or not, and it'll be, okay, so you have a minute or whatever to draw. So they're drawing for a minute, and then before we go on to this next part, I'll call either in a few kids' popsicle stick or just cold call, or hands. What are observations we can make about this? Do you want to?
It looks slimy.
Okay. What else?
I noticed that it has round bubbles on it.
Okay, round bubbles on it. What do you think, or who has a guess about what those round bubbles could be? Like, what could be in those round bubbles? Now, is that too late?
Too late. Because I was going to say, they look like berries. Maybe those are fruits for that plant.
Okay. We know that fruits come from where?
Plants.
Seeds? They might say that after today.
Maybe.
Okay, so we know that berries or fruits come from seeds. And where do seeds come from?
Seeds come from plants.
More specifically, the part of the plant we talked about today.
The seed, wait. I don't know that part.
Seeds come from where? Think of a sunflower.
The middle?
The flower. So seeds come from flowers. Thinking about some of the plants we've learned about, do you think that each...
Wait, let me stop you for here. So the first thing that you asked was the observation question.
Yeah.
And you're probably not going to be asking the same kid. So the
Yeah.
kid gave the observation. So your next level of question might not be, so I guess you're getting to adaptations.
Yeah.
So maybe your next question is something like, I don't know, do you want them to go into which one does it live in next? Like, where do you think that this plant could come from and why? And
Okay, yeah, so just do the observation and then just like where, then looking at these. Okay. Yeah, because
And
that's
then
how I
you
did
can
it
just-
today. Because otherwise I feel like it leads them to the answer.
Yeah.
Okay, observation and then where and why. So how I was doing it was having them share where first, because they mostly like, but it doesn't really matter if they choose where if it's not like, if they don't have a reason why. But I usually had them share where. So today I had them, like I broke it into 3 parts. So it was the where, and then it would be like, okay, we say aquatic. Which piece of evidence like proves that it's aquatic? And then I had them talk to their teammates, and then I had them raise fingers for which piece of evidence. And the one I would guess that they would choose based on today would be 2. Like light only reaches the top. Then maybe like, what about this plant would help it do that?
This is a tricky one.
Yeah, it is.
So the first level, observing. Second level, more of like a connection question, where. And then the third question being like, why
Yeah.
is that helpful to the plant?
Mm-hmm. Like, why would that be helpful to the plant for it to be, or so if this is an ocean plant, like, I guess, so where, and then I think maybe, like, the reminder of, like, what does a plant need? And then the fourth could be, like, how would this adaptation help it get something it needs? And then so it would be looking at that, and their evidence could be, like, light only reaches the top
I guess
of the
then
water.
where is, like, the last question,
Yeah.
right? So the what, because this is something they've routinely practiced. What are the things the plant needs, but they have to like access
yeah.
their knowledge. And then the next thing you were saying was a lot.
I think the next would then be where, but then like using evidence.
Or what does a plant need? What on this plant helps it get what it needs, and then where do you think it would live?
So what does it need? Yeah.
Yeah.
How does this adaptation help it get something it needs? So in which environment would this be most useful?
Yeah, they might not point out like the specific adaptation unless you're saying like observation. Oh, you notice those things on it. What does a plant need? It needs these 3 things. What do you think? What do you think that's helping it get? Okay. So you're helping them first to identify the thing that they're looking at, the adaptation. Mm-hmm. Second, going through the scaffolded questions. Do you think it would help to write these on your lesson plan?
Yeah.
Or on a Post-it?
On a Post-it would be great.
You love Post-it. Well, our next time to meet is this Thursday, but it's a check-in for grade level stuff. So you're doing this, you said, for 2 more days?
Actually, the rest of the week. So 1 more day with plants and then 2 days with animals, which would be really fun.
That's great. So maybe I can come in before the end of the week. So I'll come back in before Friday or before Monday. And then we can debrief on Tuesday.
Okay.
How this went.
Cool.
Okay. We can high five, but it'd be really cheesy.
Oh, you told us. Cool.